back, as he got to the back door, he'd say, "Okay, boys." And by the time he got his boots on and got out to the barn to milk the cows, he expected them to be there with him.
Mm.
So that was what he did every time. Must be time. Hey, I'm at a good stopping point.
Okay.
While visiting Pop one time, I came across an old bicycle that was up in the
Yeah.
barn, and I understand that that was a bicycle that belonged to my father. Of course, the tires had long since rotted on they were nothing but rim, and the bicycle was a 32-inch, which was, I never realized they made bikes like that. It was much too big for me. I couldn't fit on it, but I could put my foot my leg under the bar of the bicycle and make it go with just the rims. Anyway, I used to go up and down the driveway somewhat on that, mainly just down the driveway. It was just a slight hill, and I could just barely make it go. But this was a bicycle that my father's older brother had bought him one time when he was a young man, and went out and earned his first, I understand, earned his first $50, and that's what he wanted to buy his younger brother a bicycle. So I bought his younger brother this bicycle, an orange bicycle. Boy, it was a bright orange, even though it had been up in the barn for a long time.
Do you remember when they got electricity?
No.
No?
No, I don't.
That would have been later.
When I'd visit them, radios were, everybody just had radios when I was a kid, but the radios were one that was just a big box like this, and then it had a separate speaker, and it was a big thing. They always would go in. It was 6 o'clock news, I guess, or 8 o'clock news, whatever it was, and they'd turn this on, and boy, you didn't make any noise then. It was always just hush, hush. Everybody'd sit and listen to the news. You forget when you don't, the communication that has come a long way, and you forget that people back then didn't have. It was just radio. It just had come in, and reporters were just, like during the Second World War, people were putting maps out so they could figure out where everything was and who was where, and this was all done by radio. But back then, when, as I said, Pop had this one radio that had this one speaker in one room. It was in the dining area, and that's where they listened to the music, listened to the news. I never remember listening to any music or anything, but just the news. Boy, that was the big event of the day. Every evening, I listened to the news.
Now, you moved to Syracuse. You didn't live there very long, did you?
I think about 4 years.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
So you went to grade school there.
I started grade school there, yeah.
Is that where the story about little Albert came in? Was that the little boy that...
No, Albert was down at...
That was another school.
That was another school, yes.
You want to tell
But
that
Albany
story?
Syracuse had some interesting things up there, because we lived where a bus was the end of the route, and it used to turn around, and the bus came right by our place. And although we were in this quite populated and so forth, the bus driver used to often stop, and he'd give my sister and myself a ride. And he'd just stop and open the doors, and we'd get on, and he'd take us right by the school and then drop us off. No charge. And I don't remember even where the school was, but I do remember just going to having a bus driver give us a ride like that. And particularly on rainy days, that was very nice to get a ride like
that. Your dad worked where when he was in Syracuse? Did he work for Mobil at that time, or was that later?
Yeah, we had My father was had a it looks like time. Time. Picture?
Uh-huh.
All right.
Yeah, were we gonna tell more about Pop Seger, or are we
Yeah,
gonna?
well, I'll just tell one more about Pop Sager.
Okay.
When I got out of the service and went back and finished high school, was finishing high school one weekend, it had been about 2 years, I guess, since we'd been up to Albany, New York, to visit my grandfather, and I suggested to my father, I said, how about if we go up to see Pop Sager this weekend, or this next weekend? And they said, gosh, it's been a long time since we've been there. Yeah, we could go. So he made a telephone call, and we decided that weekend that we would go. And we went up to Albany, and my grandmother had been dead for a long time. Pop lived by himself at that time. And when we got up there, my father and I stayed out. I guess we all stayed out in the farm. But my grandfather said he wanted to have a nice picnic for us, or everybody to lunch at the next day, which was a Sunday. Sunday afternoon, he'd have everybody out for a picnic before we left. Not a picnic, just a lunch. So he fixed a real nice lunch for everybody, and he had his 2 daughters and their husbands came out. I guess his other 3 sons, and anyway, the whole family came out. Everybody was there. We had a real nice reunion, and just a wonderful time. And I guess about 2 or 3 o'clock anyway, it must have been before that, but about 1 or 2 o'clock we left to go back to Philadelphia. And the next day, I went to school, and where I went to high school was down at Temple University, and I went to school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and got out about 9 o'clock. And I used to take a motorcycle back and forth unless it was a rainy day, and it happened to be a little rainy, so I didn't take a motorcycle. I took the train. And when I got off the train, my father was there to meet me, and he said, well, I thought it was so unusual because he'd never met me before there, and getting off the train, and I said, this is very nice to have a nice ride home instead of getting damp going home. And he said, well, I just wanted to come down. He said, I got some good news and bad news. And I said, oh, really? And I said, what is it? And he said, well, I just would like you to know that your grandfather dropped dead today. And I said, Pop? And he said, yeah. And he said, yeah, every day one of his daughters used to stop by the farm and see him. And Monday afternoon, she said that your Aunt Edna stopped in, and Pop needed a haircut. So he said, I'm going in town. Would you like to go in and get a haircut? And he said, yes, I would. So he went in and got a haircut. They came back out. She did a little errand and whatever she had to do, and came back out to the car. And they got in the car and started home, and she pulled out of the parking place. And when she pulled out of the parking place, she said, well, would you like to take the long way home, or would you like to take the short way home? And he said, I think I'd like to take the long way home. And with that, she pulled the car out, and he slumped over, and that was the end. That was, he died just like that.
Wow.
And anyway, he said that they had such a nice visit the day before that, and he had commented to his daughter how nice it was to have the whole family up there. And you know, having all the work of preparing lunch or whatever was probably just more than his system really would take. But I think he was in his 80s someplace. So anyway, it worked out very nicely.
How about that?
That's it. There you go.
Pop's finger.
That was Pops, yeah. That was life.
We never got the Tinky this time, did we?
No. Have to get the Tinkies done.
That's another bunch of stories, isn't
Oh
it?
my goodness, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, 'cause my two grandfathers, one of them never learned to drive an automobile, didn't like automobiles, and the other one, he was very much, he drove an automobile and very much up on modern things. Although Tinky never, they didn't have a telephone, but anyway, he was out in the business world, and because of his job, he worked for the railroad and was what they called a commercial agent, did a lot of traveling. But anyway, he was a very modern, much more modern. And just, when I say modern, I think it was very eye-opening to me. I was stationed down in South Carolina at one time after I came back from overseas, and I did get a telephone call, and it was Tinky Weeks was down in Columbia, South Carolina, and going to be staying overnight, and he called to ask if I'd like to come in and have dinner with him. So I said yes. I went in and we had dinner, and I thought that was real nice. We got through dinner, and he said, "Would you like to take a walk around town?" Well, I'd been downtown. I knew where a lot of places were downtown. And lo and behold, he took me down to the park, and he told me stuff about that city I'd never dreamed of. I didn't realize he had been there. And when he was stayed overnight at these places anyway, he would have time on his hands, and he'd find out all about the history of these towns and cities, and knew where all the parks, and knew what all the, you'd go to a statue of somebody on a horse, and he'd say that was General so-and-so, and he did thus and so. And anyway, it was just very interesting. He pointed out buildings and stuff, and I felt as though here I'd been there a month or so anyway, and I didn't know anything. I'd been in town several times. He gave me a very nice tour and made me realize that he knew a lot about the various cities where he traveled, and made good use of his time when he was there. So I think that's about it for the grandfathers at this time.
Pop Seger, you said that he went to church. Was he a Methodist?
He was a Methodist, yeah.
I guess that his father was too, apparently, from what the obituary stated.
I think, yes.
Elias.
Yeah. Pop was very active in church, and I remember we used to, my younger days anyway, I would always go into church with him on the weekend and Sunday. I don't know if they had mid-service, they probably did, but he was very active and had to go various meetings. I remember every once in a while he'd have to go to a meeting in the middle of the week. But the little church where he was still there in Slinglan's, a little Methodist church. I guess it still has about the same population that it used to have, the same membership. A very large church.
Well, I appreciate all your
Time telling us about Pop. Thank you.
The pleasure's all mine. I'll write it down sometime.
Okay, we're testing on channel 1, and I think we've finally got the combination so that we get a good... Okay, I'll take it off and stick it up here like I usually would wear it and see if that doesn't sound better. I don't think it's going to make much difference. I kind of have an idea that it's going to sound real good on channel 1. Now, just to be sure, let's switch over to channel 2 and see what happens. You ready? Okay, let's, hopefully the sound will be equally as good on the second channel, but just to be on the safe side, we'll do this little test and see if it doesn't sound alright on the second channel. And I guess with that, we'll just flip it off and take a quick look and hear.
try it without the remote microphone and just flip it off. So why don't we try that next and see which one is going to work. So now we're on channel 2, and we're going to just turn it off altogether. Once we turn that one off altogether,
Turn what off?
just turn that little mic on the top off. got it off. And I'll just, we'll see if that doesn't pick up any better with a regular microphone that's right on the machine itself. It's got a little microphone that's aimed towards me, and maybe that'll work some. So we'll just see if that doesn't work. Let's turn it off now.
Solid wood cabinet, set deck, set dual auto reverse T-deck, tape deck, Sherwood receiver, and mountain radio, and second turntable, and
That's right, it's cast iron.
Wrought iron lamp, family, great-grandparents' picture, antique. Copper pictures, sofa, high-back queen-size sofa, antique gateway table.
Okay, that should be good.
Thanks to Super Polygrip.
Super Polygrip forms a seal that holds so tight, many denture wearers can enjoy more of their favorite foods, even corn on the cob. Super Polygrip.